Howdy folks, Rudrose here for the final set of Opus 22 Hidden Hope. I am here with Ghoul02 helping me finish out the Light, Dark, and Limit Break cards. Ghoul, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. Let's get to it, shall we?
Let's do it. We shall not waste any time. Check out parts 1 and 2, and let's get on with our first light card. Here we have a light summon. Haven't had one of these in a minute, since Medine, I suppose. And this is Eden. If in an 8 deck, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? A no-brainer in the sense of that's clearly where it's meant to go. Whether you still want to put a light card in your deck is up to you. But the fact that it can become absolutely zero, that's really cool. So at its best, it's a zero-cost summon in instant speed. Essentially says kill 2 things. You know, there's very few things that aren't going to die to this. Outside of an 8 deck, you're probably not playing it because it's quite expensive. And even in 8, maybe, again, I haven't had much time to test with the 8 package. Maybe it's going to be self-sufficient enough. You just don't even need this, or you're not going so in on the 8 package. When you get to yours, too, I'd be curious to know how much you'd be willing to pay for this, because once it starts getting north of 5 or higher, then I'm like, now I'm starting to wonder if I want to spend that much CP on it. But it's cool. It's nice to see a category-themed summon like this. I don't know if we've really seen one of those before, so it's nice to kind of have a cool payoff for it. How good it will be, that's up to Category 8 to decide, but I like the card.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like the FF10 and FF13 Bahamut in a way.
Yeah.
That said, like, that Bahamut really did not feel good at 5, and granted, that only kills one thing. This is going to probably kill 2. So the question kind of just becomes, how many characters do we need for this to be good, and how quickly can we get those characters into play? 8 is a very weird category for this, just because there's so few. Like, what you would want is like a backup engine or standard unit backup, and there's only one standard unit backup in 8 that effectively is a vanilla from like Opus 6. So like, if you get a couple of those in play, and maybe you get a forward, it costs 4, kills 2 things, it's a pretty decent rate at that point. I just wonder, like, because 8 itself doesn't really seem to have a lot of ways to play with its backups and get those into play, I don't know how often we're going to have the character counts to really make this into a good card. Maybe it just works like the Bahamut in 13, and this becomes your quote-unquote lightning equivalent, where it's like you're okay playing a light card because it'll, win you the game on occasion. Yeah. But I don't know. Something on this one just doesn't click for me in the same way that 13 Bahamut did.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, though.
Speaking of which, let's move on to Citra. Citra had an incredible card back in Opus 10 that was just super strong value with an EX burst that really hadn't been seen at that point in the game, at least specifically in the light element, so it could go anywhere. This one is it's just kind of weird. Like, I'm trying to think of why would I want to take a light or dark slot for this specifically on entry. Like, the searching out any summon from your deck of 3, that fits the criteria and casting for free is clearly a very strong effect. But what summon are you doing that to? And it is tied to her entry effect, so it has to be something you want to do the moment she enters play. Do you want to Misdragon their break zone? Do you want to, Chocobo her back and try it again? And then her effect, because all the cards removed, they want to be of the same element. So you also kind of want to be in mono. So where are you playing her in mono? And then her first effect, 2000 power, is so small that there's no way that's intended to be removal. It's probably intended to be like a combat trick. Unlike Lulu, it'll proc on your opponent's turn, so block, surprise, haha, cast whatever, you're 2000 cheaper. Like, I can see the potential of this card. I definitely can. But the game's so strong right now and so fast, and we have such good light and dark cards as well. It's like, I don't know why I would pick this over one of those. How do you see Citra?
Yeah, the effect, like, it's one of those cards that nothing reads poorly on it, right? I don't have any issues with the text, moving cards to the break zone. Okay, you probably want to play her in like a mono type deck. That's fine. That's not too difficult to do. Being able to tutor for any summon cast immediately is a good effect, but she's light, and it's like, if she was even just like, say she was fire, like, okay, I can know what I'm doing, but when she's light, she's competing with stuff like Shinryu, which is just like this format warping threat that your opponent really has to play around. I don't know, do they have to play around this in the same way? So then the question is, like, what doesn't want Shinryu, but wants this kind of solid but low impact forward? And granted, she does only cost 3. It's not difficult for her to refund that 3. Maybe you can get like a Leviathan in water and draw 2, put one on top or bottom of your deck or something like that. There's situations that, like, seems okay. where is this going and what is taking this over Shinryu or Lightning or even like Kadaj or Neo X Death? There's just so many high impact, high power light and dark cards that it's very difficult for me to see this finding a home.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to, I think it's her husband. I know this is Rain's father, Reagan. So funny, when we first saw this card, you and I were at the Winter Cup, having a hell of a victory, I might add. But I remember we talked about this because, of course, it was like, oh, a new card. And we were sitting there, I think, at a Starbucks, just like, what do we use this on? Because, the most obvious targets are multi-element cards. Oh, you can go get El Cid. Oh, you can go get the Warrior of Light. But without those as targets, we were really sitting there. I don't know. Who do you even want to get with this card? Similar to Citra, like all the text reads fine. Pulling stuff out of the deck is incredibly strong, especially playing it right to the field. Cards like Noctis in the past prove that, hey, if you can repeatedly dull stuff, that can matter when you're trying to push through for damage. But yeah, again, do you want to play this over Kadaj, over Neo X Death, over these other cards, Warrior of Light from last set that have proven their strength? And I still just am not sure who the intended target for this is. Do you have any ideas?
There's a couple decent ones. I like her a little better than Citra just because getting a specific forward out can just win the game. And 4 different colors is a little bit easier of a requirement, given that just you can remove a 4-color Warrior of Light and then just 4 random cards and it'll work. I'm like you, the prime target is probably the hardest thing about this because now we're in a multicolor deck, but we're not getting Warrior of Light, which is what you would want to get probably.
Yeah.
I saw some speculation, oh, this is the best soiree card ever. It just pulls Madame Edel out. And I'm like, okay. So this is Dark Madame Edel.
Yeah.
I get what you're going for. I don't know that we're running that over, say, Darkness Manifest.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's really explosive body that your opponent has to remove and generates a threat. Not bad in that archetype, but I'm trying to think like bigger. I think the Zac from the Anniversary kit could be a really nice target as a card that like comes in, doles a forward, deals 5k, goes to combat, attacks, doles another forward, deals another 5k. That's like an interesting thing you can do with it. The other one is Gilgamesh Brave Exvius, the one that's really been showing up in the 7-cost wall decks. If you can get this lined up, that deck probably, if you're on a deck that's turboing that, maybe you want a dark card in there that you can get into the break zone at some point so you have the extra colors, but this also tutors for it. Those decks sometimes would be on the starter deck Golbez from Opus 17 as a like really bad Ku Sith that also could get back Gilgamesh BE from the break zone. This can kind of do that. So I think it's better than Citra just because it's so much higher impact, but it's also still very expensive, requires a very specific type of deck, and I don't know that it's as explosive as some of your other options for that are going to end up being. And then, like I said, it's competing with Darkness Manifest because Darkness Manifest does this for the 4 colors of Warrior of Light. So like, does this really want you to be in like an Ice Lightning type shell to make that work too? I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, and Darkness Manifest really was good in Soiree last set. Like, he was kind of a nice new piece for them. So yeah, I don't know if you want this over that, but I guess we'll see. All right, folks, that is it for Light and Dark. Very, very quick. So we are going to move on to limit breaks. If you don't know what limit breaks are, pause this video. I'm going to throw a link up here, and there's going to be a link in the description. Go check out either my video or Ghoul's video, because we're going to talk about these as if you know how the mechanic works. So if you don't, pause this, check it out, come right back to us. For those of you who do know, there's one specific thing amongst everything else I want Ghoul and I to evaluate while we're doing these, and that's, if this was a normal card, would you put it in your deck? So I want to make sure each of us says, yes, I would slot this, no, I wouldn't. Because obviously the advantage of these is they don't have to take up deck space, which is huge. That's always been one of FS' real limiting factors, is the hard 50 slot. So without further ado, here is Zac. All the benefits of Zac are, well, he's a job soldier. He's category 7, so as Ghoul has mentioned with several cards this set, Cloud Pod, this is a target that you always have. You actually don't have to find this other target. You just always have access to this one. That is going to be his biggest power, I think. He seems pretty solid in a fire list if you have other effects that can round up. So, I just need a little extra more ping and he can come finish it off. I don't think I would ever slot this if this was a normal card, but the fact that you always have access to it as a limit break just seems quite strong. So yeah, I've liked it the more I thought about it, just because, again, there's no downside to these cards currently. So there's not, even if you never use them, who cares? It never hurt you.
Yeah. Definitely, like, the nice thing here is that it's also like a 1 CP 7K in a way. If you think about, like, it says 3 in the corner, but you don't have to discard a card from hand to play it. Like, it's not taking up space in your hand that you're casting, which is also kind of nice. Angeal is going to actually make this do. Say you play an Angeal, you pull a Zac out of the deck later on in the game. You know, okay, I'm going to limit break for Zac. Now all of a sudden you're pinging for 5 instead of just 3. That's kind of nice. You get a lefty on field. You're pinging for 7 again for a very cheap resource that you're really not that interested in maintaining. And I think this is also a really, really cool card for specifically 6 of all things, because there's a weird restriction when you play Final Fantasy VI, where you want to have, if possible, 56 characters in your deck. But we noted this with our, Winter Cup recaps that you really struggle to get rid of 9Ks. Cards like Une, or even like a Darkness Manifest, any of those things. Your best bet a lot of times is like, well, maybe I get like the full party Zac off, or like a double Sabin special turn. None of those line up very well, right? Like, unless you're like very far ahead. Neo X Death was another one that was like massively problematic. But this is a way to round up that ping that is not a slot in your deck. So now all of a sudden you can sack the Umaro, and then you can just cast one of these, and now you're hitting, 11K. You're killing those bigger threats. And sure, you're not going to get a draw off of a lock or anything, but you're not hurting your lock's consistency while doing that, which I think is actually a really cool benefit to the card. Kind of a small thing that I think actually got overlooked a little bit when these were first revealed. Yeah.
Would you slot it normally?
Probably not, but I think that's like kind of the beauty of these cards a lot of the ways. We'll kind of get over that. Like, this reads, I mean, outside of the cost, it almost reads like a common or a rare from like Opus 3 maybe, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of an above costed body with a very, above curved body with a very small ping effect attached on entry. So I kind of like, it's kind of fun comparing these to those.
Yeah. Well, next we have our Fire Legend Montleonis, probably the one I've heard the most buzz about. This seems to be the one folks are most excited to build around. Clearly wants you to build in Mono Fire, and it's a huge payoff for that. That, boom, you get to revive a 3 or less and a 5 or less. They come onto the field, they gain haste immediately. Yeah, you lose a backup, but who cares? You're doing all this crazy Montleonis power. So it's cool. It's nice that Fire finally has a big payoff for this. There's a lot of targets that fit those criteria. I'm not going to pretend to know who the best ones are. I mean, you could go far back as Opus 2 Zondi, who in his heyday was quite a good card. Now you don't want to pay for him. Well, if you didn't have to pay for him, maybe you like him a little better. So who you get, I'm going to leave that up to the deck brewers. He's good. He's really, really good. He's clearly a great payoff when you get there. And again, it doesn't take up a slot in your deck. I guess my only question would be, is Mono Fire, is Fire going to be a big thing? But that I don't know. So we'll see. But card reads great.
Yeah, this is the card you
slot in a normal.
Yeah, let's say if you say like 6 CP 9K that does this, you absolutely would play this. This card is completely absurd in the sheer amount of shenanigans it enables. It does have the issue, like you said, you do have to play Mono Fire. Mono Fire's got a lot of ways to get to the 5 backups. They've got a pretty meh engine in Miyu. It's definitely not the power of like Sarah or Nordstalin or Emina, but it does mean that you have a backup that gets 2 other backups for you, which is always, you'll take it. You have cards like Geomancer, which are like just great mono cards for kind of digging and also maybe getting those big forwards that you don't want to necessarily cast into the break zone. You have Cyan and Tenzin and Samurais, and that deck's ability to kind of turbo through your deck for these okay-ish standard unit backups to kind of fill your backup line with. I think we'll be seeing a lot of Montleonis before the set's done.
Yeah, absolutely. So, moving on to Ice, we have Victoria. This was one of the first ones spoiled alongside Zac. Is a Dragoon. I can't really see that ever coming up. But really good card for Ice, in particular that it just targets a forward. Not having to target a Doll forward is so big for Ice. And again, which proved why Ishtola was so strong last set. She could just bop anything. 7k damage is always a hair under where I want. Like these days, 8k is kind of the threshold I'm always looking for. But still, the fact that you've always got it in reserve. You mentioned it, I think, when it first came out, that maybe Final Fantasy 13 starts to fall off with cards like this, knowing, hey, they can just pop your Vanille turn 1, as long as they're playing some form of Ice, because they have this card in reserve. Also, her field effect shouldn't be overlooked. If you're playing an Ice discard deck, being a 10,000 power body, like, you're not really going to be able to get over that. So this one seems really strong. I would slot this in a normal ice deck too, just because of the unrestricted targeting. So yeah, she seems like she could be pretty potent.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about this is that it does kill Rufus. I mentioned like one of my issues with Rufus was that nothing trades even with Rufus for the most part. Usually the effect to kill a forward costs in the range of 4 CP on average, right? You especially early game before you get set up. So if Rufus comes down very early, he makes you discard. He kind of becomes a pseudo 2 CP forward. Well, Victoria is a pseudo 2 CP forward that kills the Rufus right back, which I think is very, very nice. I'm very excited for that aspect of her. Just a really, really good card. This would probably see play anyway. Granted, like I said, maybe she would cost 3 normally, but like a 3 CP 7K that kills another 3 CP forward in ice would be a really welcome addition to that.
Yeah.
As an archetype. So, no, I'm very excited for Victoria and some of what she enables for sure.
Would you slot it?
In the main deck, she'd be close. I think she's going to compete for headspace with cards like Ishtola, for example.
Yeah.
Which I think is why, like, at 4 CP, definitely not, because I think Ishtola is just, like, does this but better.
Yeah.
At 4, but this doesn't cost 4 effectively. This really costs 2 effectively. And at 2, oh my goodness.
That's fair.
So, yeah.
Next we have Surges. This one I can tell you right off the bat, absolutely would not slot this if it had to take up slot in my deck. Its effects are just very, very plain. There's no way to get both triggers off for a single dull freeze. We have cheaper cards like Laswell that just do this but better, or the Red Mage that came out last set. So yeah, it would never slot this in a normal deck. For the Limit Break, it's nice that he's Limit Break 1. He's one of the few ones you actually can use all 3 copies of him if you need to. Most likely, you're going to use the freeze. You probably only are going to use the Dole if like it wins you the game, it knocks out their last blocker or whatever, which just having that in the back pocket, because I've had plenty of those games, I just need something to Dole a forward. So that could be scary that, hey, I always have something to dull a forward. So, yeah, he's a funny one because, again, as a Limit Break card, obviously he's fine because there's no downsides, but it's like, wow, I would not waste the slot on this if he was a normal card.
Yeah, I mean, but in general, I like the kind of modal utility on this for sure. If we think about it as like a 1 CP card that freezes a forward, maybe that prevents something from attacking on the next turn, kind of prevents another point of damage, buys you time that way. Dulling a forward, that can be a way of pushing for lethal, so now you have to get kind of 2 blockers against any ice deck, or you're just kind of dead on board, which is just something to kind of keep in mind, to have to keep, be ready for. But no, you're right, it doesn't go in any deck, but because it's not in any deck, and it's just a kind of a, hey, this is the right time for this, I'm going to do it. Great card. Super nice utility to have.
Next, on to Wind Legend Ace. I was very surprised how many people were down on this card when it first came out. And, you heard all the common things. Hey, well, it's nowhere near as good as Luso, da-da-da. And yeah, if I wouldn't slot this if I had to have it one of my 50 cards, because it's not nearly as good as Luso. And we saw that the Fat Chocobo summon, just wasn't really worth it. But I don't have to slot this, and believe it or not, this is going to sound crazy, but there are actually a few times Wind can't quite get to the chain it's looking for, so to just have this as a backup plan, that it doesn't cost a card from hand. If you're on 5 backups, okay, tap 4, 2 from hand, here's Ace. I think that's insane that they have this just in case I can't get to that Luso. In that 5% of games, I have a backup plan always on hand. That's pretty scary to me. And unlike Mont, where he kind of just blows his load really quick and then he hangs around, Ace says I also then get you continued value if I hang around. So again, I wouldn't spend a slot on this if it was a normal card because the Wind deck is so tight, but I don't have to. So this card worries me that now Wind just has another thing in its pocket just in case.
Yeah, for sure. I think people kind of have Luso brain rot in a way, which is like, Luso is an insanely potent card, right? But he's not quite everything at all times. There are times where I've gotten both Lusos early and discarded them, and then I try to Azora one back, and I get Mistdragoned, and I no longer can Luso for the rest of the game. Like, that's not necessarily uncommon. Another thing you'll see sometimes is you'll have a Luso on field for your 3rd cast, and you'll go like Lulu, something else. You'll try to Chocobo back the Luso, it'll go back to your hand, and then your opponent will Brynhild to the Luso, and you just lose. These are not, like, the most common scenarios, but they do happen in Wind enough to be somewhat scared. If you have to get the Luso turn off, sometimes you do that. And something I noticed when I started playing the Earthwind, I didn't have Shantoto on my list for a long time. I was like, well, if I need to wipe the board, I'll just, Noctis away the first problem that protects the rest of their field, and then I'll Luso the rest away. And what I noticed was, when I added Shantoto back into the list after a while, how nice that was for just headspace of, as opposed to like, okay, I got to think 7 turns in advance, at which point my opponent can interact with me for the whole time I'm doing any of these, and anything they do might just be enough to put the CP down where I can't quite Luso 7 them. I'm just going to tap out, play Shantoto, and say, do you have the answer, sir? And that matters in long tournaments when you're trying to, just get to the end. That matters if you're trying to push for lethal. Maybe you've got lethal on board and your opponent passes with, a big field of their own. You just go, okay, I'm going to tap out, play ace. Do you have the answer?
Mm-hmm.
All of those scenarios are very valid and very relevant. And maybe this wouldn't see play in the main deck of the deck. I think he actually might. There's a lot of ways to search big forwards now, or in Wind. The card like the Goddess, I think, was actually kind of slept on as like just a value piece you could use to, win games at the right time, so on and so forth. I think he's just better than the Goddess if he was a main deck card. But the fact you don't have to, and now you have this backup plan if something goes wrong, is fantastic. I think Ace is an extremely strong card.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Next, we have Yuri. This one is definitely not as strong as Ace to me. It's kind of weird how specific it is. If you could get any Chelinka, and like I could get the Chelinka backup and, attack twice, that would be really cool. I'd be a lot more excited about it. But it clearly wants you to play the new Chelinka so you can immediately give him haste, which if you're on 5, okay, he's a 9k with haste, but he's just a body. Like, he doesn't, I guess he generates another body on the field, but that body's small. I don't know. I was kind of like, is there something I'm missing with this card? Like, for costing 5, again, I understand pulling a forward out of the deck, but you have to get a very specific forward at a very specific value. If they ever print some crazy 2-cost Chelinka, that's 100% worth, like, whoa, it goes nuts when it comes in. But as it is right now, I feel very underwhelmed by this card.
They were very careful with the win limit break. That was the rare, as far as trying to make sure it couldn't just enable Luso and cash shenanigans. And the way they ended up doing it is like, we'll try to give it some extra value elsewhere, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Chelinkas in a second, but they wanted to try to prevent that from just being like, because if there was a vanilla 2CP LB card, 1000 power, 2CP or 2 wind LB, it would be completely broken.
Yeah.
In every way. Heck, it could have 1000 power and then die as it enters the battlefield, and it would still be broken. So they had to try to make it not a super cheap basic effect, probably, is what they were going for with this. The downside of this, though, is you have to run a Chelinka, and there's only 2 valid options. There's the one from this set, but that one requires you to be on a Crystal Chronicles engine. I'm granted Northstalin plus any Crystal Chronicles backup will do it. But that still is like, there's a cost requirement to that still. That some decks are playing the Moogle engine, for instance, or the Sky Pirate engine for backups. And in those situations, Yuri doesn't get any benefit from that Chelinka, which is kind of frustrating. And the other option is Earthwind. You can pull the Earthwind Chelinka out, break a monster.
Yeah.
Which kind of feels like maybe that's what they should have done with this, is just make like a 4-cost, Wind LB that just breaks a monster on entry. But now there's this weird evaluation. I'm going to talk a little bit about Yu-Gi-Oh! For a second here,
sure.
So bear with me. In Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a concept of a card called a Garnet. And it's based on this card called Gem Knight Garnet that was part of an engine, where if you have a card, there was a card you would activate that would require the Gem Knight Garnet to be in your deck to use. And it was broken. It's one of the best cards ever printed. But you would run 1 copy of this Gem Knight Garnet in your deck. And if you drew it, those 3 really, really strong cards would no longer function. And it was a real cost that if you drew that card, these 3 power cards no longer functioned anymore. So now the question is it actually worth playing the Garnet for this effect? The card in your deck that the moment you draw it, if you say, I'll play 1 Chelinka for my Yuri, if you draw that Chelinka, the Yuri no longer works. Is that ever going to be worth it for, 5 CP, 2 forwards, break a monster? I don't think so. Even in like an Earthwind, maybe Earthwind, like you could consider it just like, well, she discards for both elements if I draw her, and then if I don't draw her, I'll just cast Yuri, pull her out of the deck, break a thing, put 2 bodies on the field. That's like the only place I really, really like Yuri, but yeah, I think having to run the Garnet, and it's the only element that has the Garnet it has to play, is a real problem for Yuri.
Yeah, good analogy. In case it wasn't obvious from my negative thoughts on the card, I would not ever slot this either if it was a
yeah, for sure.
Well, sir, if you have trouble with monsters, might I introduce you to our favorite mage, Shantoto? You know, of all the limit break cards, because I do think they really missed the theme of this mechanic, this is the one that feels the most thematic because you have to spend all 8 of them, but man, do you get a mega effect from this. So, Neo X Death, eat your heart out. This is Shantoto. Very, very earth heavy, so not impossible to play it in like Earth Wind or, you know, Earth X, but clearly wants a lot of earth. But then you get a Toto forward on the board and you remove all other forwards and monsters, leaves a body behind, which is really nice. She's 9k, so she won't die to an Amaterasu. I like this card a lot. Even if it doesn't see play, even if people don't want to pay it, I just like it a lot. It doesn't really even conflict with backup Shantoto, because sometimes you don't see her. Like, you look at one of Steve D's recent videos where he had him in there, but he just couldn't draw him. Well, now you've got this one in your pocket that you're not going to get those the backup resources back from it, but you're getting a body out of it. So it's a cool card. I picture her coming in and just boom, blasting the field apart. And I hope this is just like a cool card idea, and I hope this doesn't become a scary thing of like, oh my god, they always have this Shantoto now, which is really, really frustrating. Nice thing if you're a collector, you technically only need 1 copy of it because you'll never be able to play more than 1. So yeah, this one I like a lot. Hopefully it doesn't end up being very frustrating, which it could since it's Shantoto on demand, but it seems quite... I mean, I don't know, like, if I'm looking at the darkest version of this, does this card kind of shut down monster decks? Like, can monster decks really exist knowing they always have this in their back pocket? What do you think?
Yeah, get your 1 foil, just in case.
Yeah.
But I suspect we're going to see a lot of Shantotos slipped as the first LB card to pay other costs, and very, very rarely actually hit the field. There's a lot of hidden text on this card that's very problematic, and I think they were overly safe with the design space they went on her. I have kind of just kept saying, you know, as I've been running, you know, test hands and goldfishing and trying to see what's going on, every time I've done this, I've kept in the back of my head, if I needed a Shantoto LB here, could I?
Yeah.
You know, playing not mono earth decks. I have yet to be able to say I could Shantoto LB if I needed to. In non-mono earth. That's not good. Now, granted, there's not a high cost of running one in the limit break deck, so maybe you're okay with that. But then there's other problems. Because she's LB7, you're going to cast 1 LB for the entire game. So the idea is like, oh well, she costs 9 total, but she's on a card in hand, so she costs 7. She costs the same as the old Shantoto, but that's not even fully true. In my opinion, she actually costs 9 CP, like the equivalent of a 9 CP Shantoto, in a way. And the reason why is when you cast Shantoto, you flip your entire limit break deck. You can no longer limit break for the rest of the game. If you cast 2 limit break cards over the course of a game, which I think is going to be pretty normal, maybe in like long games you'll get to your 3rd limit break cast. Each of those is a 2 CP discounted cast that you did over something else you could have done. So when you burn your entire limit break deck into Shantoto, you're getting 1 less of those discounted casts from your limit break deck over the course of the game. So she's burning 2 more CP in a way from a future turn by doing that. On top of losing the utility of your limit break deck, on top of having this ridiculous cost of having to pay 5 earth pips. You can't even, like, they couldn't have made it like 4 earth pips in 1 so you could, like, you know, maybe discard 2. Like, if I have 2 earth cards in hand, you should let me use this effect. I'm sorry. You know, like, if I can get her on the field and then do that, come on, like that was not necessary, in my opinion. Am I gonna run her? Probably. I'll make sure I get my 1 foil. But I'm actually starting to wonder if any deck that isn't majority Earth isn't going to start kind of cutting this just because she doesn't come up. And if she doesn't come up, why is she in there when you could maybe just get a utility out of something later on?
They are always very cautious with their board wipes, probably overly so. I wouldn't run this if it was a real card just because it's named Shantoto. If I'm running Earth, I'm running the backup one.
Yeah. One more thing, like you mentioned, like, oh, well, this stops like those monster decks, but like, when does it stop the monster deck? It stops it late, maybe, and I guess like maybe once they've got like 8 billion blue worms on the field, if you kill them, all those blue worms, they just kind of lose. But also my experience is those decks are very good at getting like Ishtola on field at the right time.
Yeah, also true.
You know, to the point where like even going for Neo X Death against those decks was kind of scary because I would spend so much into my Neo X Death that even with that, sometimes I wouldn't win the game. And this is as expensive as Neo X Death is in a way. So Yeah, I'm just not a fan of this one. I really liked it when I first saw it, and the more I've thought about it, the worse she's gotten.
Will we see a Shantoto bomb on stream? I'm certainly hoping so. We'll find out. Next, we have Matt, who I was insanely disappointed with. Similar to Sir Jace, he only costs 1, so you can do it all 3 times if you need to. It's just like, if you'd said to me, hey, Travis, come up with like the most generic, boring Earth limit break you can. I was like, 1,000 power and brave when it enters. Oh, sure enough, here's what it is. Yeah, he's a monk, but if you're playing monks, you're probably running the better mats, so I don't think that really matters. I guess it's just a backup one in your hand. I mean,
like the thing about that is like if the other mat's on the field, you don't need this one probably. So you're like, okay, cool. But like if the other mat's not on the field, sure, yeah. I'll put him out.
I would never ever slot this if this was a normal card. However, again, sometimes you have those turns and those games where it's like, you know what I need right now? Just a hair more power to get over this board. And you know what? Matt does that for you. So as a limit break, he's obviously totally fine. As we get more Earth limit breaks in the future, I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy get cut pretty quickly. But yeah, he's fine.
I actually think this is one of the best rares.
Really?
The more I've been playing with this, the more I've really come around on him.
Do tell.
Especially into like something like aggro. The ability to attack without dulling your forwards is very potent.
True.
So he is a 8k brave. He's a very big body for small, like, weenie decks to get around. He gives your entire field brave, and we've talked about how, for instance, I don't know if this is going to be a thing, but remember like the Rams and Knight, right? Where it's like he attacks, but when he attacks, you don't really have the 4 Knights to dull to use the action to break a forward. You have that ability on demand now. Say you have Warriors of Light. Now I can attack with my Ferris and not lose my Refia trigger for when I go back to their turn.
Yeah.
Warriors of Darkness. I want to keep my forwards active for my Diana. I don't want to get my Glaive on the field yet because I really need the Alba trigger this turn, right? Well, now I can play the Alba for free and during the start of combat, and then I can give the Diana and the Noct Brave so that they can attack safely. There's so many situations where that comes up that I would gladly, if I could say, wish for a 2 CP4 that gave my whole field 2,000, 1,000 power and brave.
Yeah,
really comes up, and it really does well in those situations. I think this card is very strong. I've been shocked at how much I liked this card. The more I played with it,
I'm glad.
I thought it was a nothing burger when I first read it. It's like, okay, big body, cheap cast. It's not a big deal, but like. Also, Limit Break 1, you can cast 3 of these in a Leela in a game, or 3 of these in a Leo in the same game. So again, we talk about how each of those Limit Breaks is kind of 2 CP discount, 2 CP discount, 2 CP discount. The more of these you can do in a game, the better that rate gets. So yeah, no, I really like this card. I've been amazed.
Ghoul high on Matt the Monk. All right, show me the sauce, people. Would you slot it if it was a normal card?
Absolutely not.
That's what I thought.
Maybe if it was like an Earth monster that like you could just pay 2 CP for to like give your forwards 1,000 power and brave till the end of the turn.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. Like, let's look at that situation. Say you have a 2 CP monster that you could pay 2 CP for to give your forwards 1,000 power and brave till the end of the turn. There are decks that would love that effect and could consider that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it becomes a lot less appealing when I have to naturally draw into it at the right time. And
yeah, but that's kind of my point though. Like, just randomly, you can just pay a bit of mana to give all your stuff brave, safely.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, and if this next one, this lightning card. So this is lightning the element, not the character. We'll get to her in just a second, of course. This is Cloud. This has to be again one that has a lot of buzz about it, and because I think it's just generically one of the most straightforward ones that enter the field. Break a forward of 3 or less, which are becoming more and more commonplace as the game has gone on. The limit burst is also quite strong, although quite expensive, but break any forward plus hit them for a point of damage. It can sneak out some games. Granted, if you're only using Cloud from your limit break deck, that's not really feasible, so you have to be running other Clouds. So that part's kind of weird, but again, I think his entry effect is so strong, I don't think you really even necessarily care about that. That's just like gravy if it happens. Yeah, this one worries me a little bit, just because, don't get me wrong, I don't like Rydia. I hate Rydia, and I don't like the twins. Like, I hate the twins. They're cool designs, but I just find them oppressive cards to play against. Can you play cards like that if your opponent has a Cloud at all times that they can go, oh, okay, dead? Can you play Hope Vanille or Fang Vanille if they just go, okay, Cloud, dead? Like, and again, there's no question. There's no make them have it. There's no, okay, do you have the answer? Well, yeah, of course they have the answer. He's sitting right there. So, yeah, Cloud, I think, is one of the strongest ones. He's one of the lowest to the ground ones. Again, you don't have to get to 5 backups like you do for Mount Leonis or, a big board with Ace. So, Cloud does worry me a little bit. If Limit Break ends up being an oppressive or an obnoxious mechanic, I think Cloud might be one of the reasons why.
This card is maybe one of the strongest cards in the history of the game. For the simple fact that there's so little cost to play this. I would not be surprised if we're 10 sets in the future and we have LBs still, and the game's still going strong, if there was still not every single deck that can tangentially make Lightning CP has a Cloud and Limit Break deck. I think the card is that good. It deals with so many problems just incidentally by existing. You can use this for 2 cards in hand, kill the Vanille on the 13 board, or kill Rydia, or kill Palom, or kill Porum. I think it causes those decks to have to completely refocus how they build themselves, because you can't just go Palom, Porum, pass anymore, because now they can Cloud, kill the Porum, and then just find any way to instantly deal with the Palom, and you probably lose on the spot because they've got this. They didn't cost him very much to do that. This card is so strong, I've considered looking at every single Lightning EX Burst as a card I could theoretically run in a deck. And if I draw it, it's Cloud, and if it's an EX Burst, I get the ability on the card as opposed to what it is.
Yeah.
Say you're in a deck that doesn't care about its limit breaks very much. Say Mono Wind, for example, right? Mono Wind maybe doesn't have any limit breaks it really likes that much. It's got the Yuri, which it's not going to cast very often. It's got Ace, and they could run Leela. Maybe you run Wind Lightning Golbez, and you say, if I draw this is a 4 CP Cloud. It's a break spell that can help protect me. But if it goes to damage on EX Burst, I get to search a Chocobo for my deck. And I would absolutely play a 2 CP forward with an EX Burst to search a 2 cost in my deck that also can break a forward, right?
Yeah.
The more I thought about it, that is how strong Cloud is. 10 out of 10. Completely broken. I'm sure I will lose a lot of games to this card.
I'm sure I will as well. This I probably... would you slot this if it was a normal card? Because if it's a normal card, it's kind of a generic break lightning effect, which lightning has so many of. So that's the funny thing is I don't know if I'd slot this if it was just a normal card.
I mean, what's it called? The little monster, the Shadow Dragon, actually sees more than a little bit of play for this exact effect. And granted, that one can kind of blink out of the game and doesn't want to be a forward, but that's a 3,000 power forward.
Yeah,
so
that one doesn't die to Amaterasu, so...
Yeah, but that one, if you're trying to not die or you're trying to get over a big wall, 8K is significantly better. And
that's true.
Power doesn't always matter, but when power does matter, it matters a lot. 3K is a very small forward. This is a very big forward for your investment. No, I would very much consider this card if it was a main deck viable card. I think the special is specific, but there are decks that can make use of it. The Wind Lightning Cloud, for instance, is a very, very strong card, and if you have to play this early in a Wind Lightning deck, and then you draw the Wind Lightning Cloud, 2 turns later, now you have something to do with it.
Yeah, that's true. Very good point. So maybe it's unfair to look at this Lightning card compared to the Cloud. I just don't get this card. So it's a limit break of 2, so you can only use a maximum of 2 in a match, just like the Cloud. Costs 4, just like the Cloud. Only has 5,000 power for some reason. That part really confuses me. And then it gets back a summon, which we know from time memoriam is quite good text, but it specifically has to be a lightning summon. I definitely would not slot this if this was a normal card. The fact that it's always on demand, and hey, maybe you need that Ixion, maybe you need whatever to feed the man in black. Being a limit break gives it a lot more leeway, but at least especially compared to Cloud, I was like, this one doesn't excite me much, which is funny because if it didn't have the word lightning summon, if it said choose any summon, it would instantly flip to being like, ooh, this card scares me. I don't want to deal with this. But the fact that it's locked into lightning summon specifically makes it a lot less intimidating for me.
Someone at Hobby Japan loves the element lightning.
Yeah.
This card is insanely strong.
Really?
So let's think about this. Let's contextualize this another way.
Sure, please.
It is the exact same cost as Cloud, right?
Okay, yeah.
What do we say? If there's any problem with Cloud, what's the problem with it? It's very reactive.
Yeah.
When you're ahead, Cloud LB does nothing for you.
True.
When you're ahead, you know what's really, really good?
Man in black forever.
Pushing your advantage and getting a summon back to now stop your opponent from ever catching up.
Yeah. What summon are you targeting with this, though?
Ixion, Odin, 1 CP Ramu. There's so many good targets for this.
Yeah, I guess that could be potent.
Like, all of a sudden now, I'm a little bit ahead. My opponent starts their turn, but then now they have to deal with an Odin that's going to break the first thing they play and draw me a card. Ixion, okay, well, maybe I don't want to Cloud kill the Porum. I'm just going to get back Ixion this time and cast Ixion and wipe the field. Now I can Chadley for Ixion at the first turn of the game, pitch it, not give a crap about it until it actually comes up, and then cast Lightning, get Ixion, kill everything. This card, if it was a main deck card, would be a 3 of in almost every Lightning deck.
Really? Wow.
Think about it again. This is a 2 CP Lulu that has to get back a Lightning Summon.
Yeah, but Wind has way better summons to get.
Yes, but Lulu, Terra, Citra, every card that has ever gotten a summon back from the break zone has been busted good.
Usually, yeah, they are very strong.
This is a 2 CP get back a Lightning Summon.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're correct. Because those cards have all been quite strong. So yeah, maybe that effect is just that good.
And there are good Lightning Summons. There's a ton of them. This card is crazy. Wind is like, please, sir, may I have a good limit break that everybody knows is good? And Lightning is just like, here's the best possible thing we could possibly give you for both situations. You want a reactive one? Slam a Cloud. You want to get even more ahead of your opponent? We got you there too. Play the Lightning. Even something like a Wind Lightning cast deck is going to be on 1 CP Ramu. It's probably on some number of Odins.
Yeah.
There's no deck that isn't in Lightning that is not playing some number of Lightning Summons because a lot of them are actually pretty decent. Card's very good. This can get back the free cast Ramu and just cast it to kill something too. It makes that card better. Granted, that card has a very specific targets, but it's still good.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see at the end of the set which one of us was right about this, because I still feel like about it, but you made a very good case for it, so maybe I'll be eating my words come a week or two here. Next, we have our Water Legend A5 cost Tidus Guardian, limit break 3, so you only ever need to get 2 of these, like the Montleonis, because you can only ever cast 2. Clearly just a super insane payoff for Mono Water, if in case Lena Leviathan just wasn't enough. And if you can get his full effect off, all 3 abilities are clearly great. A forward to the bottom of the deck, and then you get a backup on top of the deck. We saw how strong that was with Une, like making them. Not only are you getting rid of the backup, you're making them draw it again to burn up a draw. Like, that's so brutal. And then draw 2 cards. Yeah, the card is clearly insane. If you get to that point, obviously you have to have a big board, but you don't just have to have backups. It doesn't count characters, so all those monsters are not going to help. It does have to be forward and backup, and you do have to kind of pay it in weird segments that you got to pay the full 5 and then you pay another 3, but it won't die to Amaterasu. I could maybe see playing a 1 of this if this was a normal card, but the fact that it's a limit break that you just always have to remember it's there in the back of your mind, yeah, he seems quite disgusting. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually don't end up needing this, because Water is just still so damn good, other than against like a Wind deck, that they might not ever even need this. It might just be easier to go Lena Leviathan, but just in case you like exile their break zone before Lena Leviathan comes out, then here comes old Tidus, like, all right, well, let's do this the other way then. So yeah, this card scares me. Beautiful Amano art, and just another great tool in Water's pocket.
Yeah. So fun fact about this card, there's one player at my locals who plays 1 deck, and it's played 1 deck only since Opus 16, and it's Mono Water. And this card got spoiled, and then Leo came out, and he is in Discord going, oh my god, Water got no good limit breaks. And I look at him and I go, you are actually joking. There is no way you believe that. He goes, no, Tidus is just win more. And I'm like, no. Tidus is not win more. Tidus says win. Win more is a card that you draw and lose because you drew it when you needed some kind of action. Win is when you play a card and it says the game is now over. So, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, again, you're going to hear a lot of me talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's a game I know very well, and it's a game that actually has a lot of analogs to this. There are 2 cards in the game that saw a ton of play over the history of the game from the extra deck since I started playing. They're called Access Code, Talker, and Boral Sword Dragon. And they're cards that basically, if they hit the field uninterrupted, the game is over, you win the game. Which is one of those things. You end up like going both ways. When you're like new to the game, you read these cards. You go, these are insane. How could they ever print a card that you could just go into and win the game anytime?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get a little better at the game, you start going up the curve. You go, wow, these are kind of bad. I could just negate or destroy them as they come into play, and I don't die. And then you go back to like the other end of the scale and says, these are insane. When these hit the field, the game ends. That's how this Tidus is. And the fact you don't ever have to draw them just means that if you're ahead enough to cast them, the game is over, you win. Anytime you can do that, you feel really, really good. The other nice thing about this is it's generic enough to see play in other decks. If you have 5 backups and you can put a Leo on the field, you can pay this from the Limit Break deck pretty easily in a Mono Earth deck even. Which is like super cool. I'm actually glad there is a generic payload for that, especially considering Earth doesn't have a good payload for...
Mm-hmm.
You know, Earth's going to be burning 3 Mots and a Leela and feeling kind of bad sometimes. So the fact that they can like consider running like a Leo into Tidus is kind of cool in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, no, the card's clearly very strong.
Yep, absolutely. Well, what about his water counterpart? This is Leo. I would never run this if this was a normal card. If you want me to pay 3 for a 3-cost body that draws a single card, again, the monsters do that and they're untargetable. So, but as a freebie, when you have those turns where you're just like, I just need 1 card more. I just need 1 card more. It's just there. Like the 3 feels very overcosted, but again, I think they were trying to be aware of the fact that, yeah, but you can do this at any time. So, you know, we'll maybe make it cost a little more. So yeah, he's a 1, so you can do him multiple times. Good for you. You're probably only going to do it if you really need to. Like, I don't see many people being like, man, I'll just put out Leo this turn. Maybe you will. Maybe you're just like, whatever. I just want to draw 1 card.
You have 5 backups. You drew 2 more backups. Whatever. I'll just Leo, see if I can find something better to do this.
Yeah. So, again, he's terrible as a normal card, but as a limit break, card draw, I think, is going to be very strong on a limit break card.
I mean, a 1 CP forward that draws a card on entry isn't, like, good, but it's not bad. You know, this is kind of like a Luso before Luso gets to 7 casts in a way.
Yeah.
I will say, this card being a limit break is so good, I almost wonder if it's worth Wind playing a copy of Philo so they can cast this.
Yeah, just get more card draw and cast counts.
Yeah, if you think about, like, would Wind play a 1 CP forward they could do at any time to draw a card and, you know, maybe up that cast count a little bit? Absolutely, you know. -1 CP to dig into your deck a little bit? Super, super strong. I will say one thing I'm very happy about. I'm glad this is card name Leo. Otherwise, I'd be a little scared. Like, let's say this was card name, I don't know. This is card name Ida.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a Leo deck, the 1-cost Leo, that deck's biggest vulnerability is actually the 3 slot. Because they only are playing like Waka and like that's like it.
Yeah.
For their 3 drops. This would allow them to, like, if you break the Waka and it goes to the break zone, they could cast this from the limit break deck to then enable Leo if it wasn't named Leo. So I'm actually kind of glad about that. This card is completely busted. I expect to see a lot of this as just like I'm a little ahead on CP this turn. I'm going to cast Leo to dig a little deeper, find a better payoff for next turn, and maybe stick a body that does a point of damage later.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a limit break definitely changes the way you have to think about the game. Speaking of which, this is it, folks, our final card for limit breaks. This is, I hear the Beatles, Here Comes the Sun, Little Leela, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. So, if this was a regular card, this is utter garbage. I am not paying 5 for an 8k body that does nothing, and then on attack causes a single power reduction. We have a dark, I can't remember her name, but she like uses crystals and she can hit the whole board for -5k, and she was way cheaper. Now, because she's a dark limit break card with limit break of 1, she can go anywhere. You can slap her into any of the decks. Even then, I don't know, this one just doesn't, I'm still paying 5 for a card that just sits there and doesn't do anything and then has to attack. And again, 7,000 power is not nothing, but there's plenty of cards that won't even kill. So I don't know, even as a limit break, this is the one I was kind of the most confused about. Wait, you want me to pay 5 just to have a body that sits there and then doesn't do anything? Like, I don't know. I'm not feeling this one at all. Are you feeling differently?
Yeah, I think this card's very strong.
Really? Okay, hit me with the sauce.
So, I mean, it's not even necessarily sauce. I'll kind of go over some little things about this card that maybe weren't as apparent. First of all, get 3 copies of this card. Every Limit Break deck right now is going to be kind of fixed and there's plenty of them that are just going to need filler limit breaks. This is the filler limit break card. It's intended to be that. It's what it does. When this card was first revealed, we only had the JP card browsers. Everybody was like using their phone to point out that people translate. I thought this said, on attack, choose a forward opponent controls. It gains 7,000 power until the end of the turn.
According to the browser, it did. Yeah, that's what mine said too.
Even with that text, I thought the card was good.
How?
Which is like, that sounds like ludicrous.
Yeah, that is ludicrous. Explain yourself.
You don't have to like. Well, in that situation, okay, you choose a forward that's already dull. Don't worry about it. But even with that situation, if you did that, she's still generic. You can still clear the field and then attack with her. She's still an 8k body you can cast without having anything. Say you're in a deck that's got, a large quantity of backups. There are turns you just don't draw anything to do.
Sure. In that specific situation, yeah, it's better than nothing, but does anyone actively want to invest 5 into this? As like, that's what I want to do this turn?
I think this is going to be the win limit break you see the most. Because and again, every time you read the limit break card, reduce the cost in the corner by 2. If there was a 3 CP card that Win could just say they have in their hand that does anything relevant, there are times where Wind will want to cast that.
But that's not technically true. Like, I understand you're not losing the card from hand. You're still paying 5 for this. It's not like you can tap 3 backups.
But if you played a 3 CP forward, you're paying 5 for it.
Sure, I understand that. But you are still paying 5 for this as well. It's not like you cannot tap 3 backups to get this on the field.
But I'm trying to recontextualize this. This is an above curve body with a positive effect that you can always cast. She doesn't have to live. Maybe she just blocks an attack. And you put a 3 CP 8k on the field that blocks an attack, you live a turn, your next turn you pop off, you win.
Yeah.
Maybe she does untap and she gets to kill something.
Yeah, I mean, that's good.
Your opponent's on 13. They do their thing. I don't have anything. Maybe I'll just throw Leela on the field. I'll kill the lightning when it comes back to me.
Yeah.
And look for an answer next turn. That's completely valid. If she has to block, she can block.
Yeah.
Maybe she sits there, maybe you give her haste and she attacks that turn and kills something. I think this card is very good. I wouldn't be surprised to see her start to phase out over the course of the first couple of sets where we get better options for generic cards. But I think Wind will very likely play 2 to 3 of her per game as long as Shinryu isn't on the field. And even if Shinryu's on the field, maybe you choke her with a Shinryu back to hand so you can cast a Leela. Because getting a cast off, even a bad cast, is better than nothing in Wind sometimes. I think that Water, if it needs a filler cast, can use Leo, but maybe they want a higher impact. Or maybe Leo's already on the field. You can cast 2 Leos and 2 Leelas in the same game.
Yeah, true.
Maybe, I don't think Lightning, but Earth, for instance. Earth really only has Mott. The moment you cast your first Mott, you can never cast Shantoto. If you're in a mono Earth deck with no way to color fix for another limit break, guess what your option is? You got to cast a Leela.
Yeah.
And that's great. You can cast 2 Motts, 2 Leelas, or 3 Motts and a Leela.
I mean, it's better than nothing for sure, but I will be amazed if anyone casts this in a serious game and they're just basically trying to not die.
I think there will be game-determinative situations where Leela is cast and wins the game because you cast her on that turn or the previous turn or 2 turns ago. Granted, it's an Opus 3 Hero Dark card.
I was going to say, tell me you wouldn't play this if it was a normal card.
No, absolutely not. Like this, but I'm not.
Yeah, you're not.
The mechanic itself is so inherently strong by itself. That card could have given your opponent 7,000 power, and I would still say it's one of the best cards in the set. Get 3 copies of it.
Wow.
That is how good this mechanic is inherently by existing. This card could say it can't attack, and it would be broken.
It would be broken?
That limit break inherently is that strong.
Ooh,
Yuri as a 5... Here's another example. Yuri, if you don't want to run the Chilinka brick in your mono win deck, this is always better than Yuri. Yuri is an 8k forward if you have 5 backups.
Yeah, that's fair.
Only advantage is you can have Yuri on the field and a light card. There's no other advantages to Yuri over this card if you're not willing to run the Chilinka.
Well, I appreciate you making such...
Also, Yuri is limit break 2. She's cheaper than Yuri.
Yeah, that's true. She's less.
So... No, this card is extremely strong. I cannot stress to you, and maybe this is because you play a lot more Lorcana and Magic, where this is not as strong a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
You do realize, like in Magic, it's not uncommon for decks to run companions that they can get no benefit from whatsoever, specifically because, well, if I have nothing else to do, I can wish for it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I expect to see her in the Limit Break list because she'll go anywhere. I will just be surprised if she's genuinely cast as like, this is what's going to win me the game.
I think it will happen quite a bit.
Well, I hope you're right, because I would happily eat a serving of humble pie, but I don't know. I think you're way off on this one.
What's the companion? There's a companion that I know I've like seen, and it's like the deck does not play any creatures. And the companion restriction was like all of your creatures have to be of the certain types. If you don't have any creatures, you can always play that companion.
Are you thinking of Lurrus of the Dream Den? Or?
No, not Lurrus. Lurrus is like 2 or less. But like there's ones like all your creatures are like cats, beasts.
Yeah, I know what you're. I don't know what it's called, but I know what you're thinking.
But like that card sees play in those decks. Any deck that does not have any creatures, because on the off chance that there's nothing better to do, you can pay 3, add it to your hand, and then you can do something with it.
Yeah, but that's how I see this. It's going to be there's nothing better to do, not I want to actively cast my little Leela.
That's the thing, is that like that mechanic is so strong that it's worth doing that. If there's like, maybe I'll run a utility creature in Magic, you almost are willing to cut the utility creature in exchange for being able to run the companion. A vanilla companion. This isn't even a vanilla. This technically does something if she lives a turn.
True, which is really nice.
So, no, I think that this is insanely powerful, and like I said, she'll rotate out. But I'm even like starting to put her in over extra copies of Shantoto, like the first copy of Shantoto in some lists that I'm building. Because the Shantoto is so hard to cast in multi-element decks, that the extra Leela might come up more often.
Gotcha.
Stupid strong. I cannot believe the first Dark Limit Break was this good. I thought it was going to be like 6 CP draw a card. And I still would have said the card was broken. 5 CP, 8, that card could have had 5,000 power and been broken. This card has 8,000 power. I can just cast a 3 CP 8K that blocks the attack. Holy cow! That's so good!
I love that you're so high on this card.
How many times have you started playing a game? You get to the end, you have your 5 backups in your control deck, and you top deck 2 more backups, and you go, oh, shoot,
absolutely.
I lose.
Absolutely.
Now you don't.
I'm not disputing any of that, but again, you could do that for any of these Limit Break cards. That's not unique to this one. My point is that if you're dying, you spending 5 to cast this isn't going to save you. Like if they
it
just
absolutely will.
All right.
I guarantee you, this card. We're gonna go to the recap video later on, and Travis is gonna go, wow, I can't believe how many times Ghoul was right. And Leela
I would love to. I would love to be wrong about this.
So
I can't wait.
No, extremely powerful card. Get 3 copies of it. Get 3 copies of it in foil. She's gonna see so much play, especially early.
You heard it here first, folks. And with that is every card in Opus 22, Hidden Hope, all the limit breaks, all the elements. Ghoul, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you helping me out, and that way I didn't have to sit here and do all this by myself. Do you want to give any shout-outs, closing thoughts before we head out here?
No, I think that's pretty good. Always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the new set. I'm really excited, actually.
Likewise. Folks, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below, first of all, who do you think's right about Little Leela? But secondly, what do you think of limit breaks? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are there ones you're really looking forward to playing with? All that good stuff. Genuinely appreciate you watching. Hope to see you at one of the Mysidia Cups or tournaments this season. Enjoy Opus 22, and until next time, for Ghoul02 and myself, Rudrose, take care.